All right, so to deploy our website, we're going to be using Heroku. Heroku is a pretty simple and straightforward hosting service that allows us to have our website on a real web address like launchwithcode.com or swiftforentrepreneurs.com. So using Heroku, we're not going to go into too much of the details. I'm just going to basically be getting you up and going quickly. If you want to know more about Heroku or how you can use Amazon Web Services with it as well, check out codingforentrepreneurs.com because we have different projects that cover all of that. So what you're going to want to do is download the Toolbelt for whatever system you're on. So go ahead and download the Heroku Toolbelt. And also you're going to want to create a account at heroku.com. So go ahead and create an account, and then we are going to be basically jumping into the dashboard from there. So I'm going to let you go ahead and pause and go ahead and do that. And then what we're going to want to do is go to getbootstrap.com/example/cover. This is going to be our 404 page and or any of our 400 pages as well as our 500 pages. So if we inspect element here, actually I'm going to view the page source. I'm going to copy all this, and we are going to go into our project, into our templates. We're going to add a new file called, save it as 500.html, and then I'm going to just paste it in real quick, and then I'm going to make another new file, and I'm going to call this 404 or 400.html. Okay, and also paste that in. So what we're seeing here is these are 400 and 500 errors. So if you have an error like a page not found error, this is what's going to show when that happens. So what I'll do now is I need to make sure that I have all of the CSS coming through correctly. So I'm actually going to just use their CSS. You could go back and go through the process of saving it and using your own, but I'm not going to do that. I just want to use their CSS stuff just so I can get this up and going real quick, and also make sure that if my server goes down, that the CSS, or if my static server goes down, that the CSS will also work. So I'm going to delete some of these comments, and then I'm going to grab some more of the CSS just by copying the links now. Copy link address. Scroll to the bottom. Oh, jQuery is already there. Copy link address. All right. And then inside of this wrapper, let's actually look at the cover. I'm just going to change cover your page to being page not found. I'll just say 404 page not found. It's actually going to be any type of error, but for now I'm just going to say that. All right, and then just change these, get rid of some of this stuff like this one and this. Okay, so there's that. And I'm going to say launch with code. Okay, so I'll let you actually go ahead and change this how you want, but I'm going to do it like that. So paste it in and put it on the 500 one. So 500 error, 500 server error. We're working on a fix now. Okay, so now we have that. We have our two error pages. And we actually want to change this to being a 400. I saved it as 400, but I wrote 404 here. So 400 error. This is a request problem. So just say there is a problem with your request. Copy that. And now we're going to make a 404 page in our templates. So under template, save it as 404.html and put this as 404. Page does not exist. Okay, so these are errors that you absolutely need to have when you have it on debug is false. Otherwise, it's going to just look funny. I mean, these pages will show up anyway, but if you don't have a template for it, it's going to look just very plain and simple. So we don't want that. All right, so that's it for those error pages. Okay, so now what we need to do is I'm going to set up, going to just close out a lot of these pages and set up what's called a proc file. And this has to do with when we go live. Again, if you want to know more details or see it in more like step-by-step, check out Coding for Entrepreneurs, how we launch on there with Heroku. So proc file, and it's just web, gun icon, and then it's going to be lwc.wgi. So WSGI. LWC is the settings folder here. So if you have a different project name or something like that, just go off of that settings folder and then WSGI, and that will work just fine. And it's gun icon. That's how you do it. So we're going to save that. Okay. And we're going to look at our git ignore here. So I added a git ignore for GitHub in the first place, but I'm also adding this. You want to make sure that you have this git ignore for our Heroku, which we're going to be deploying here in just a moment. So since I already have a GitHub account, or a Git is already set up for me, if I do git status, it's going to show me some things that have changed, right? You're not going to see this because you haven't started a Git like repository yet. And since you installed the Heroku Toolbelt, hopefully you did that. You went through the installation. Since you installed that, you now have Git on your system. So what that means is you can actually now use this version control system on any folder that you have. So I'm just going to do a basic one so you can see that how to do it on yours. So I'm going to go to change into the desktop, and then I'm going to make a directory. So you don't have to follow this, but I'm just going to call it LWC test git. Okay, so I'm going to change into LWC test git, and I'll just do git init. So that's initializing a Git repository inside of that one folder. Now, where you're going to want to initialize it is where your manage.py folder is, and that's where you have your proc file as well. So this is where you're going to want to initialize your Git. So when you want to do git init, this is where you'll do it. And to know more about Git, we have tutorials on it. It is Coding for Entrepreneurs tutorial, so go ahead and check that out. Those will cover more about Git in more detail, at least for the basics of Git. So now that we have Git here installed and we have our proc file, we have to update our settings file to actually match our local settings, right? So right now we have it set up so it matches our local settings. So we needed to match up our local settings and our production settings. So like the actual file that we're going to be sending to Heroku. So the set of files that we'll actually be sending to. So inside of LWC, I'm going to make a new folder here called settings. And within this new folder, I'm going to make a new file, and it's going to be init.py. All this is doing is converting the settings folder or directory into being recognized by Python. If you don't have that init file in there, a folder will not actually be recognized. So if you look at all of the other folders, they have inits in them, so they can be recognized. And that's what those inits are for. Okay, so now we have our init here inside of settings, and I'm going to add a few new files too. So save this as base.py, and then save a new file as local.py. And then last but not least, we will save it as production, not project, production.py. All right, so there's a few things that we need to do. First off is normally you don't actually work with init. There's few exceptions that you do, but the chances are that you're a new user and you don't actually really need to use init very much. But in this case, we actually do because of how we're going to work with our production file, right? So when we actually go live, we don't want the production file, or excuse me, the local file to be used at all. We only want the production file and the base file. When we are local, we don't want the production file that we use, we just want the local file. Okay? So what we'll do now is what we're gonna first import the base file. So base from .base import all, and then we are gonna try to import from .local import all. So if that local file does not exist, we will just say live equals to true, and then if that local file exists, so in this case, if it comes through, it will exist, we'll say this is false. Right, so this means that the local file is found and we are not live. Right, so if it's not found, then we're going to assume that we're live. So live equals to true. So if live, then we'll import from .production import all. Now, all I'm doing here is setting up new settings files that are going to override this settings file to handle our local and live production stuff. This could also be used if you have multiple computers, if you have multiple people working on it, and you want to have different ways of importing their settings based on whatever it is that they're working on. So the first thing I'm going to do is change my base file. I'm going to just copy everything from the original settings file and put it into the base file. So this stuff is things, we've already done this, right? So like you should be fairly familiar with everything that's going on in here at this point. And from here, I'm just going to go ahead and look into our local file. And this is pretty much going to be the same. So I'm just going to copy it and paste into local. Oops, I accidentally paste this stuff into local when that should be in our init file. So save that in init, and then we'll close out init. Base file, I'm going to copy and paste that into our local, because realistically, our base file might change as we go forward. Like our secret key, yours probably will not be this, and mine is not going to be this at the end of the day. When it's actually in production, we will change the secret key, as it says, keep it a secret. So if you ever send your project somewhere and you plan on using that project, make sure that you change this or remove it. Okay, so I have base and local, and they're the exact same. And the init file, what it does is local will then override what's on base as our settings. So now let's go ahead and actually test it. Let's first off, we want to change the name of our other settings file to just like settings_old. Because we want to keep it and just make sure that we still have it, but we don't actually want it to be there anymore because we need to actually test it out. So in our terminal, we'll run python manage.py, run server, because we actually want to test to make sure that our local is still working, because if it's not still working, then we're going to run into some issues. Okay, so now going back and do a refresh in here, it's now saying page not found, and then it says template file does not exist. Well, this has to do with our base dir. So if we look into our base.py, so let's actually close settings.old. Base.py, if we look at this, what this file is doing is it's actually looking for the root of the settings folder, or the main configuration folder, which is LWC, where this is. But we put it into another folder called settings, right? So base.py is in another folder. So we have to go up one whole new level. So I'm going to copy this, paste it, and now the base dir is correct. And I'm going to paste it here too. So now it's going up one whole level and it's looking for the right area. So if we actually look at this error before I refresh it, we'll see that it's looking in source, LWC templates, and in a second, it's going to look in source templates, right? So how we had it set up before is it was just looking, it was adding this extra directory, and by adding ospath.dir name, it goes up one directory and removes that LWC for us. So if we save that and refresh, now it's back to working, right? So that should also work for our other page, and it does. So that means that our local and base files are working. So we're going to leave it at this. In the next one, we are going to take it all the way to full-on production and finishing off all the little things here and there and actually using Git. The next one can be rather complicated. So keep that in mind when you're going forward. So actually bringing this into a production server does get a little cumbersome, and it is challenging. So if you need additional help, I suggest checking out codingforentrepreneurs.com, because we have a lot of tutorials on how to actually deploy on Heroku in more depth. I'm not going to go into that much depth here just because we want to get it up and going. If you follow it step by step, it should work just fine. If not, that's okay too. I'm going to show you a couple ways on actually how to launch it also, just so you know. But the next one should be actually the last thing that you'll actually need to do with, there might be one or two changes that we'll do afterwards if there's some feedback from you guys, but realistically that next video of actually launching should be it. All right, we will see you in the next one.